explain yourself can be positive or negative.
Yep.
I think it's actually quite positive.
That's
so
good.
I really enjoy this article. So you
Good way to
wrote
start.
this article on zerohanger.com called Content Creators Need to Accept the Responsibility That Comes with the Fun.
Yep.
Do you want to give us a quick Spark Notes version of a quick AI summary of your article there?
Yeah, I can do that. I think everyone who's watching this probably is aware of the Sam Docherty, Dan Gorringe saga that's taken the AFL world by storm really in the last week or so. I think my perspective on it is that the crux of the issue is that influencers and content creators are increasingly penetrating the AFL landscape, and if they want to be a part of the landscape and if they want to be contributing to the media, then they have to be held to the same standards that journalists are when they are breaking news, or certainly when they are putting content out. And on this occasion, I think Dan Gorringe has probably let himself down, let his platform down by not necessarily adhering to the standards that if he were a journalist would be expected of him. So the Media and Entertainment Arts Alliance outlines specific guidelines that people in the media need to follow. The Australian Press Council has similar guidelines, and there's the opportunity for complaints to be lodged if those guidelines aren't met. And one of those guidelines relates to the fair and honest attainment of material. Obviously, Dan Gorringe releasing recording unsolicited without Sam Docherty knowing falls short of that standard. So I think there is some great positives that people like Dan Gorringe bring, Cinch Footy, and there's some others that have become really big in recent times. But I think this sort of highlights that you need to have a basic journalistic understanding if you're going to work in the media landscape, digital media, social media.
Yeah. So I think we're pretty uniquely... great summary, by the way. Thank you. I think we're pretty uniquely situated in sort of the middle of that, because we have journalists like yourself, but we also are content creators. So we sort of sit in that intermediary space, or that combined Venn diagram. What was your take on this? Do you think you got it wrong? Like, do you think that someone like Dan Gorringe should be held to account, like as a journalist?
It is funny because like it's just like media is so new now, and like that's kind of the whole point of this is like what he can do. He doesn't really have someone to report to. He just can do what he wants on his own platform.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment.
Big no just to do. And I'm Sam Docherty would have been a bit pissed off. Good thing that they're best mates, and it doesn't look like this has had a falling out for them, which is and I think what Sam Docherty said was great. Like Carlton fans would have loved to have heard it. Sometimes you don't want that stuff censored. We just want anyone to say whatever they want. But yeah, there's right ways to kind of present that material. So that wasn't a great look. I was actually kind of probably more off-put by how Dan kind of reacted to all of the criticism, which he probably doesn't cop a lot of. And he's not someone that cares. He probably like welcomes it, welcomes extra commentary on his product. But yeah, a bit funny with how he kind of wanted to clap back at some of the, I guess you call them more respected senior people in the field. And it's not just journos. It's like, it's Matthew Lloyd and I can't remember who else.
Lee Montagna was one.
Yeah, it was Lee Matthews, I think, another one, and Jared Waitley. So there was a few. He's happy to send some stuff back to them, which is all part of his kind of thing. But I don't know. That was kind of probably more off-putting than what the initial kind of saga started with.
There was another, I guess, little part of my story that I considered while I was writing it, that Dan Gorringe has sort of stood his ground and to a large degree sort of stood by what he's done while expressing some remorse for the fallout from Sam Docherty's point of view. But if clearly it's had an impact on his podcast because people have gone and listened to it. Now, if those comments weren't attributed to his podcast, how would he have felt? Because that equally breaks the guidelines and would have negatively impacted him because he wouldn't have got those clicks. So there's different ways of looking at it, and there's different perspectives which perhaps he didn't fully consider.
What do you think, Ada?
I think it's a stitch up from Dan. Like, I mean, it's one of your best mates, and also like the person that Sam Docherty is to Carlton. You know exactly what's going to happen when these words of his in a private matter are released to the public. Now, if Sam said, all clear, go ahead with it, happy for it to be shared, sure, understand, you've obviously got the green light, but clearly that wasn't the case. And then also the repercussions. So Sam was meant to do a pre-function on the Thursday night game between Richmond.
That's the biggest travesty. He's lost his cashies for the year. So.
Well, it's also then put potential strain on the club that he was at inadvertently, because something that his opinion was straight after a game when Carlton dished up that poor performance has been then released. So I think, as John T alluded to, and I actually agree with what his point is and his contention is that not necessarily should be held to the same standards, but there is a code of conduct that you do operate in once you're in the media, regardless of your position in it. And it's also just common decency. So yeah, people might not have agreed with Sam's comments, but if Dan got the green light to say, yep, Sam actually said this is okay to be aired on my podcast, which everyone's going to go to listen to him. So he's going to get the lick of the ice cream as well. It shouldn't also then put Docherty in disrepute, other than the fact that people just might not agree with it.
I don't have any super strong opinions on this, just because I don't see myself as qualified to speak on it. Just like, I do come from a comedy background. I spent a lot of time, and that's the thing with Dan. It's like, he can always fall back on the whole, I'm not a journalist thing. Why should you expect that of me? But it is fun seeing the whole old man media versus new media thing, because I feel like, I think he was right in when he said that they've been waiting for him to slip up in a way so that they could hang something on him. But at the same time, so I spoke to somebody who did not wish to be named, who did leave me a voice note, and the whole bit was going to be that I'll just play the voice note out on that. But I asked his opinion because he's a content creator in that space, and he said that his take was that this whole thing is basically just a PR stunt for Docherty because he's vying for a radio job. So there is, and to be clear, like, to be honest, you can't really rule that out either, because like Dan's whole thing, and I think a lot of people that don't understand what happens with the media performance space and podcasts and whatnot, is that there is an element of kayfabe where there's, you know, Dan Gorringe, he has his like, his audience, and part of being the podcaster personality thing is like, it does bleed into reality, and the line sort of does get blurred with that kind of thing. But then you get guys, but then it affects guys like Jared Waitley, who is just getting relentlessly bullied online about, you know, having a big nose or whatever. And like, all he did was just like point out what everybody else has done. It's like, this doesn't pass the pub test in terms of, like, regardless of your journalistic integrity or whether you're a media presenter or just a podcaster or whatever, it's a dick move to play a voice note that somebody asked, like, that they didn't know was going to be public. Like, I think that's just like baseline what we can all agree on is like, don't be doing that. That's kind of lame. But you know, Dan's like audience is primarily like 13-year-olds, so I don't really expect, like, I think it's weird to expect them to not do that.
I do wonder what the thought process was. If he like got the voice memo, it's like, oh, that's gone on the pod for sure. Like, he didn't give it a single thought of,
well, he's been on the show. I think, like, I don't really watch the Dan show that much. I see a lot of clips and whatever, but Doc has been on the show
best,
a lot.
like, they're really good mates.
They're really close friends. Like, so it is safe to assume that maybe he could have assumed that it was going to get played at some point, but I think his words were that thought he was going to be paraphrased.
It was gonna be a baseline that informed a conversation. And helped Dan Gorringe understand what went wrong.
The other unexpected part of all this, though, is all the Carlton fans backing what happened, just because it was like, no, the club needs to hear this. That was awful.
I think all the Carlton fans were like, well, we agree with what he said. What's the problem here? I think it wasn't a story with what he said. Like, some people covered it. I think it just became a story when Docherty was like, I didn't know that was going to air. So
the last thing on this before we move on is that the whole mix of content creators versus journalists and whatnot. So the interesting part is that Dan is also working with the AFL now. So we know that the AFL got rid of most of their media team or whatever, and now they're leaning more into the content creator side. The pushback from the AFL is going to be very interesting. Like, are they going to try to reel in their agreement with Dan Gorringe? Because, like, I don't know what their reaction to this is going to be. Because this is what he does.
It's really interesting because it comes at a time, and this is my first full year covering footy, and it's quite interesting coming at it from a reasonably traditional journalistic lens, because there are more and more content creators, and clubs are more and more on board with wanting to give those fan accounts the opportunity to produce content, because there's a really good opportunity for them to do that. And there's that platform where they can actually go into much more granular depth about some of the more minute details or minute issues that perhaps traditional media just don't have the column space to cover. So I think that's going to continue to evolve in a really exciting way for fans. But I think this is just a reminder that, there's certainly going to be some teething issues along the way.
I do like that now it's become like it used to be Fox Footy versus Channel 7, like, but now it's just like traditional media versus TikTokers, which I think is great. But let's move on. I think this story will be probably done in like a week anyway. Like it'll all go over.